Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Leaders Podcast. Today, I'm proud to say that I'm joined by Edward Ajaeb, who's the current president of Nighthawk Strategies. He's also the current president of the NCISS, which is the National Council of Investigation and Security Services. Ed brings to us today a wealth of knowledge and experience in terms of the leadership roles he has at the moment and has had, and his view on the industry as a whole. We're really excited to welcome Ed. So, Ed, thanks for taking part today. Would you like to just introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I'm Ed Ajaeb. I am the president of Nighthawk Strategies, private investigator, and also the president of NCISS, as you mentioned. I've been in the industry for about 8 years now, and I specialize in all research-based investigations, particularly. So I kind of got into the investigation profession a little bit differently than some other people might have. I was in the legal field before, and I've always been a researcher. So doing sort of the public records and background side of investigation is really what interested me most. And then right away after getting my license, I joined NCISS. I tried to join as many other associations and connect with other leaders as much as I could, because not only was I new, but I didn't know anybody. So I think really those kind of helped me put me to where I am, and I'm really happy that I've made this network.
Thanks, Ed. Great intro. Right, NCISS. Why join NCISS? Tell us a little bit about what actually NCISS is.
Yeah, so NCISS is the National Association for Private Investigators, Security Professionals. Pretty much 50 years ago now, a group of folks got together to form this association primarily to monitor federal legislation. And whenever the Congress was considering legislation that might impact investigators or security professionals, NCISS would step in to act. And it's now grown to this association of members all over the country that not only does legislative advocacy, which is, of course, still our primary goal, but also to bring members together, offer professional development, bring things to investigators that they may not otherwise have, either at their local or state level. So we bring together investigators and security professionals from all over the country, and also try to provide them not only a community, but benefits to them as individual business owners.
Got it. Thank you. And now you stepped up and you're giving back, right? So you ran for office, and now you're currently at the top of the tree. So tell us a little bit about your decision processes in terms of why would you put yourself running for the board, and again, giving your time back. Just explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, I initially started on the board a few years ago. And I thought it was really a good opportunity to kind of see how the association runs. It was actually not my first time on a board of directors. Several years ago, I was on another board as a membership director, and I really enjoyed it. That was a couple of years term, and I thought it would have been an honor to be on the board of a national association like NCISS, and I'd always been trying to find a way to contribute and to give back to the association. And it also helped, like I mentioned, having joined associations and met people and networked with them. It sort of felt natural to join the board of NCISS because half of the folks on the board were either good colleagues or friends of mine or mentors. So I felt like not only was it a good opportunity for me to join the board to contribute, but also a good way to continue to meet other folks, including folks who I had already developed professional relationships with.
Yeah, got it completely. And it's so important in our industry to develop these professional relationships. Does it take up a lot of your time, Ed?
It does at times. We have a couple of events per year. NCISS biggest event is our Hit the Hill event, which is coming up, and we do this every spring. We do this in a fashion where members can travel to DC. We set up appointments and meet with legislators. And even if there's nothing really on the table as far as hot legislation that is, imminently going to be passed, we still like to keep our message consistent and do this event once a year to remind legislators that we're here. Because really, we're the only folks who are going to go to Capitol Hill. And, if it's not ourselves, we're not likely to get, many other folks to be a voice for us. So that is really our hallmark event. We also have a fall board meeting in the fall. So throughout the year, we try to put together at least a regular series of events and professional development. So the ship does have a lot of oars running, and we're all trying to push in the same direction. So it does keep us busy, but we're always happy when that yields good results, either in Washington or is valuable for our members.
Yeah, completely. And you've got to keep that open line of communication going with as many people as you can. Talk about the investigation world. Let's go into the nuts and bolts in terms of what you do. You're based in the US, where there's, different states have different licenses. You're part of NCISS. Are there any other groups that you interact with?
I mainly interact among investigation groups like NCISS, WAD is another one that I'm a member of. I'm a member of my state association. I'm actually about to move to a different state later this summer, where I'll be doing the same thing there, joining the state association. And I'm also a member of a couple of other national and international associations. And really, sometimes you might see similar people in all those groups. You might network with different people in those groups. But really, every investigator you meet is going to bring something different to the table or have a different background. So that's why I enjoy spending my time expanding my network and meeting other folks.
Yeah, completely. How does it work in the US with private sector investigators and the public sector authorities groups? What's the sort of synergy between private and public in terms of investigations, in terms of resources, in terms of information sharing? What's your experience and your opinion in communicating with public authorities?
Many investigators who I know that do, let's say, for example, missing persons investigations will often coordinate with authorities or rely on information from authorities to be able to start their work. Also, as well as investigators who do theft cases, and those who do criminal defense are also sort of on that same side, where they're relying on a lot of that information that's been collected by police and by authorities. And interestingly, in my line of work, with doing research, we've often had to request records from authorities, requesting police reports, police records, court records. And sometimes it can be challenging because every state has different rules regarding their public records retention policies or public records release policies. So often our interaction is not even directly with the, not face to face with a public officer, but a lot of times there are bridges, such as these public records laws, that we have to really be careful to navigate. And so sometimes that can be kind of challenging to get certain records that we need from government authorities, and sort of operating within those allowances and limitations of those public records laws.
Yeah, understood. You mentioned the police. Are you able to get police records? Is that synergy open to private sector and public sector investigations, or is that not? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, in some jurisdictions you can. Some jurisdictions will, meaning certain states, and sometimes even down to the city level. Cities and states can set their own public record policies and record retention policies. There have been instances where we've requested a police report, and as long as it's not part of a ongoing, the two biggest reasons why they would deny releasing a police record, there could be three. One would be that it's an ongoing investigation. Two, that the record has been destroyed because it's a too old investigation. Let's say if you're looking for something from 30, 40, 50 years ago, oftentimes we're told that there just isn't any. Or third, that it pertains to a victim, a special victim, a child, in a case where they really do not want the identities or any details about the case revealed. But oftentimes we've been able to get police reports regarding an accident, which has been really big for investigating personal injury cases, things like that. So depending on the nature of the case, oftentimes, and the way that you formulate your records request will definitely help greatly in the records that you'll receive.
Yeah. So any of the European investigators listening to this will think, "Wow, that's pretty strange." Having being able to obtain police reports under any circumstances usually, but that's the differences between different jurisdictions in terms of what's available and the relationships. I take it in the US you get a lot of law enforcement retiring and then coming into the private sector as well. What are the challenges for some of those guys coming out of, say, a background in public service and then looking to the private sector to try and maybe start a career or continue utilizing the skills they've learned in the public environment and putting them to good use in the private sector? What challenges do these guys, do you think, have in that transition period?
We do see a lot of retired law enforcement, and even now, a lot of folks have worked in federal law enforcement or federal investigations have bridged over into being a private investigator. And the main challenges we'd see is that going about getting information as a private investigator requires a much different approach than in law enforcement, where in law enforcement you have a lot of power to, you have search warrants, civil subpoenas, and different ways to compel people to provide information to you. And in law enforcement, and investigations often would take priority. If your Facebook or something and law enforcement comes to you with a request, it's an emergency. A lot of times those cases and those requests would be heard first. As a private investigator, it's much different. You're sort of further back in the line, I would say, for requests like that. Not that they're not important. It's just, of course, the police are investigating emergent circumstances. But private investigators do not have search warrant capabilities, and we cannot compel anyone to talk to us if it's an interview or to give us information. We pretty much have this, we're in the same stance as any member of the public, but we just have more knowledge and resources about how to go about getting information than someone in the general public. So I think you have to switch to a mindset of, okay, now if I didn't have any of the tools that sort of got me some of the useful shortcuts to getting information, if you will, how am I going to go about getting certain records? And sometimes the answer is you just can't. There are definitely some limitations as a private investigator, as a private person, that you're just not able to see or not able to have access to unless you're authorized law enforcement. So it may sound discouraging, but it's also really fun because you have to develop these new approaches, which I think is a good learning experience. But ultimately, for sensible reasons, there are limitations to what private individuals can access.
Yeah, completely. And sometimes you've got to think out of the box, right? By staying within the legal boundary and trying to uncover another way to get to the end destination without utilizing the tools that you had access to. So I get it. How have you seen the industry change since you started your investigation career into how it is now?
I have, yeah. I think some of the things that I've noticed over the 8 years are really big advances in investigators that are using technology, and particularly online type of technologies. I would say it was probably back in 2016, 2017 when I was getting into the field, and you were just starting to hear things like social media investigations, or Snapchat and Facebook and all of these. And of course, those platforms had been around for a couple of years, but they were really starting to get into their critical mass of users, to the point where investigators now knew they had to learn what these programs were. They're getting calls from clients asking questions about it. So I have definitely seen more in the last 8 years or so, investigators picking up these types of services and these types of cases. OSINT is a big one, social media, digital forensics is another one. So between then and now, I have seen a lot more of the technological advances in the industry, and with investigators learning how to do those things and offering those services. It's interesting to kind of see how that will continue, because I think we sort of peaked around uh, maybe 2017, 2018, maybe a little bit of 2019. And then I think over the last maybe 2 or 3 years or so, we've now seen people sort of pull back on social media, not in terms of investigators, but the people posting. People are more conscious about privacy settings now. So you're not really getting a lot of the gold nuggets that you used to get in online investigations. People are now spreading out to two, three, four, half a dozen different social media platforms. So not only have I seen the change go up, I've now seen the change sort of go down, where there's more privacy, and we're just kind of like investigators do, just have to change with the winds and kind of follow and see where things go.
What a great point. Yeah, yeah. I didn't think of it that way. Do you think that investigators over time have we become lazy, Ed? Have we looked for the shortcuts online?
I think it's always kind of a game of catch up. There's a new platform that comes out, and everyone has to learn how to use it
Mm.
or understand it and how to investigate it. And then there was always going to be some change. The biggest change that sort of rocked the social media world was almost 6 years ago now. It was in 2019 when Facebook completely changed the way you used to be able to do searches. We used to be able to find likes and comments and third party posts and things like that. So we always look for the shortcuts and the tools to help us get to the result we're looking for. But inevitably, things are going to change. Something is going to change. People are either going to adopt a new platform that they really like. TikTok was one that really just has exploded in the last few years. So
Yeah.
it's a situation where we always have to adapt and learn something new, or adapt to a new platform or new or changing technology.
You avoided my question. Have investigators become lazy, trying to crack cases from their desks? Have we stopped going out there and talking to people as much as we used to do? Have we stopped doing the field work, the inquiries, the interviews, the statements, that side of it? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think in some ways, I say yes. I am more comfortable behind a desk than I am perhaps with interviewing somebody, and that just is directly a result of the experience that I have with doing those two things comparatively. But you brought up a good point. I think sometimes it's better to talk face to face or over the phone with someone who might have that knowledge than try to figure it out from behind a desk. Now, you probably won't be able to call Facebook and tell them I need to get into this person's account or tell me what's going on here. But when it comes to other things, like if you're trying to find records, sometimes I've spent too much time on a court website trying to figure out how it is I can get there, run a search. And you would just call, and they would either do it for you or point you in the right direction. So I do think, yeah, you raise a good point that we should be cautious about believing everything we see on our screens. And number two, only relying on those desktop resources to get things done. And I think sometimes a different type of observation or conversation would be very helpful.
Perfect. And, networking in the associations and speaking to people that do something different than what you do or what someone else does brings a different perspective sometimes to these investigations. Talk a little bit about global work. Do you do cross-border work, Ed?
Sometimes I have done cases where we have needed to rely on international investigators. Sometimes it's a background check that might have a global nexus to it. It might have a particular source that we need to resources from internationally. So in those cases, it's definitely helpful to have a network of international colleagues. One, just to ask questions, because the first thing a client always wants to know is, can you do this, or is this possible, or do they have
Yeah.
certain XYZ records in this country? So knowing somebody who you can call or talk to immediately to have that answer is definitely beneficial, and then be able to actually execute that investigation and go forward with it is also very important. And any investigator who spends any time doing work internationally will probably agree with this, that there are very, very different rules and levels of access to what you can get in every country. Sometimes I feel like all 50 states in the U.S. have all these different quirky things, but once you start going international, it gets vastly, vastly different. And things that we see every day here in the U.S. In other countries, it would be shocking if you could see family court records and that sort of thing. So it's definitely surprising.
Yeah, completely. Every jurisdiction has its own nuances, and understanding those is a challenge in itself. I want to talk before we finish up is just some advice you would give to anyone who's listening, who's thinking about coming into the private sector, starting off their careers early on as an investigator. What sort of advice and leadership guidance would you give someone that's considering a career in private sector investigating?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that folks should understand coming into the profession is to definitely take a course or learn a lot about the ethics of the profession. And I
Mhm.
think one of the things that now I'm looking back at myself when I got into the profession 8 years ago or so, I probably would have gotten my license 10 years ago. But I had a misconception about what it was like to be a private investigator. So it first came into my head, or I think someone suggested it to me at the time. I was like, no, I wouldn't make a very good private investigator. They do all these things. I thought I had in my mind that they did these particular things, had this particular background, and were very set in that. And I think that was a perception that a lot of people have. So I think getting into the profession, you really have to sort of understand it's not like how the movies and TV portray the profession, and there are also things, some ethical guidelines and considerations that may actually surprise you. It's like, oh, investigators are not allowed to do these certain things, or it's not ethical to do these certain things. So, sort of really get a 360-degree view of what it is to be a private investigator. And there are very different types of specialties, but also understand ethics. And the second thing I would do is to make sure that whatever it is that you're doing, that you're being very thorough. And not every investigator could know everything.
Yeah.
In the U.S., we have 50 different states. We have over 3,000 individual counties, and oftentimes courts are on a county level. So I don't know the ins and outs of every individual county, but I've also developed a network of folks in those states and jurisdictions that do. So the first thing would be to understand ethics and understand the profession very well. And number two is to build out a network of people so that you know what you don't know, and you know folks who know what you don't know. And then with that, you can really, I think, not only offer great services to your clients, but be a very successful and well-rounded investigator.
Yeah, fantastic answer. Thanks, Ed. Just to finish up now, give me three qualities that makes a great investigator.
I would say ethical would be first. Thorough is a good one, because you might get two identical cases this week and next week, and what worked for the first one, you might repeat that process for the second one and run into obstacles, or there might be something out there that you didn't find. So thoroughness and being able to look at everything with a fresh perspective is important. And third, I would say patience is also a really good one. I think to be any kind of business owner, you need to have that patience and compassion, especially when you're in the investigation industry. You might be dealing with private clients or individual clients who don't do this all the time. They don't really know what to expect, what they need to pay. And sometimes you need to just have patience if you're a legal investigator. The judicial process takes a long
Yeah.
time. There are certain things that are just, it's so frustrating that it takes so long to get records and things like that. But I think patience is really important to have, because it opens up your perspective a little bit to how all the process should work and what expectations could be for clients. So I think that's important to kind of keep in mind as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ed. So that's ethical, thoroughness, and patience. 3 quality skills to become a quality investigator. We've been listening to Ed Ajaeb, from the President of National Council of Investigation and Security Services, NCISS. If you want any more information about Ed or the NCISS, it'll come up on your screen. Ed, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for everything you do for NCISS and the industry as a whole, and see you soon. Thank you.